panel. So we are almost to the end of the day, but we still have one more great panel and a huge announcement coming up after this panel. So please keep with us as we're going. And I'm so excited to bring up our last two speakers. And this one, I think, just like the last panel, is really going to hit on a key topic for all of our listeners. Me specifically, I will tell you that last night I had both of my elder parents in urgent care trying to get ready for this and trying to keep my 6-year-old alive and ready for kindergarten and not learn everything down in my house. So I'm very excited for this one. So welcoming to the stage is Ai-jen Poo, the Executive Director of National Domestic Workers Alliance, and Brenda Prince, who is the Associate State Director of AARP Michigan. Thank you both so much for joining us. This is going to be a great one. Let me see if I can get Brenda up. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to let, if you both of you would be so kind and share your introduction. I will start with you. If you could tell our audience a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, Kristen. Hi, Brenda. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And thanks so much to Mother Honestly for bringing us together. What an exciting day. I'm Ai-jen Poo, and I'm the Director of Caring Across Generations and the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And what we are doing is trying to bring together all kinds of caregiving families across generations, people who are in need of childcare, people who need support with caring for an aging parent or aging loved one or a loved one with a disability, and everyone in between in one movement we call the Caring Majority, to try to push for big solutions to our caregiving crisis in this country, to make sure that care is valued and lifted up in our lives and in the economy.
It's so needed, and it touches so many facets. So the work that you're doing is critical. Brenda, if you would be so kind to tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. I am the Associate State Director for Outreach at AARP in Michigan. AARP, as many of you know, is one of the largest nonprofits, nonpartisan organizations that our body of work and our mission of work is to empower Americans 50 plus to be able to choose how they live as they age. So this topic that you're hosting today is very important to us.
I think you're muted.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. It's been the day of technology fun. But Brenda, I was going to actually jump into that question just because you did such a great introduction of what AARP is doing, and that for a lot of younger generations or those that are getting ready to not only plan their own retirement, but looking for caring for their parents, they don't necessarily know what to do or how to do or any of that. What do you recommend for people that may not have yet thought of not only for themselves, but their parents, and how they can utilize AARP in those journeys?
And that's a great question, because I've actually experienced that in my late 30s. My mother had a massive stroke and I was her caregiver. I chose not to put her in a nursing facility. There was so much I did not know or where to go. So for the first thing I would share, that if you find yourself in that situation, particularly at the very beginning of medical challenges with your parent or your loved one that you're caring for, is to establish a relationship with the hospital social worker. That was my saving grace. They know everything. They are the go-to people for resources at that moment in time and for if you choose to go home. For AARP, we consider ourselves a trusted resource and advisor on this topic. We have expert staff people and thought leaders who are engaged at this body of work, from the community outreach level to developing policy and advocating on behalf of this. So I advise people to tap into our website. It's easy, aarp.org, because you can just go to the search button and type in what you're looking for. And it is likely that we have some information there on the topic. We have a caregiver resource guide online. If you're in a different state, you can type in your state, and they have a caregiver resource line that will give you those services that you may need in your particular state. But I highly encourage people to become members, or if they're not 50 yet, you can use the website. There's no age limit on who can use the website, but just type in the word that you might have a question about and see what comes back, because we have a lot of people working on this and we keep the page up to date. We're constantly doing advocacy work. As of this week, we are advocating in Washington and in the state of Michigan on this topic.
I love that. And I think you highlight something that you were deep in that reality. So you had to very quickly in your 30s come to the realization of what those decisions were going to be. And Asia, I'm going to turn to you on this question a little bit first, and then Brenda, would love your thoughts as well, is that the U.S. is only one of 2 developing countries in the world without a social insurance program for long-term care. And this is often overlooked for many, except those who are deep in that reality. How do we bring awareness to this growing crisis of the sheer lack of care options that's going to rapidly impact our aging baby boomer population, but at the same context, affect the other areas of care where we already see a gap?
Great question. Well, one is to know that if you are struggling with long-term care, you are not alone. And there are about 52 million of us working family caregivers who are managing care for an aging loved one or a loved one with a disability and working full-time jobs. And so we are a pretty significant force within the economy and in our democracy. And so we can make change happen, which is what I think Brenda's organization and mine focus on, is harnessing the power of our voices to make change happen. But it is also really important to know the facts. And the facts are that we have no long-term care program in this country. What we have are, if you have the ability financially to pay for private long-term care insurance, which only 10% of the population does, then you can pay for it. It's very expensive and oftentimes doesn't cover what you need when you need it. Or you can completely deplete your assets and in order to become eligible for Medicaid. And that is how many people get access to the long-term care that they need. Long-term, what we need to do is expand access to long-term care so that everyone who needs it can afford it and can get access to it in the context of their choice, where they don't have to go to a nursing home. They could get assistance and care in their homes and in their communities, which is what most of us prefer. And to be able to have the dignity of being connected to the people that you love as you grow older and more frail. And that is possible. Right now in Washington, D.C., the Senate will be discussing soon, after we confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. The Senate will be discussing a budget reconciliation bill, which we want to include a big investment in Medicaid home and community-based services, specifically to expand access to home-based care for our aging loved ones and loved ones with disabilities, and raise the wages for home care workers so that they can do these jobs and take care of themselves and their families too. That would be a big first step. And then we need to build a program that is universally accessible to all people, regardless of your income, regardless of where you work, how you work. And that is something that needs to come next. And hopefully all of us working together can make that happen too.
I think that's a great, it's just so needed. And the fact that we don't have it. And I think sometimes we have that head in the sand perspective that if we don't deal with it now, it's not there, it's not as scary. And one of the things I know that you're really passionate about is bringing up the standard of care and the recognition of the unpaid work and unpaid labor and wages for caregiver. Apart from what you're seeing in the political space of the advocacy, what else can, this is, the Mother Honestly community is great about that. It's a call to action. What else can we be doing to help support?
I think sharing your story is critical. and preparing yourself and your community and your family. A couple of weeks ago, I don't know how many of you watched the show This Is Us. There was a beautiful episode where the matriarch of the family gathers everyone to prepare together, to develop a plan together for how she will receive care as her Alzheimer's progresses. And it is a moment that is so powerful because so many of us find ourselves in this situation and we don't have a plan and we're in the middle of a crisis. But if we plan early and have this conversation and normalize the conversation about preparing for care in our culture and in our lives, we can actually start addressing and building solutions from a place of strength and intention as opposed to a moment of crisis. So individually, there's a lot we can do, but really there's a limit to that until we have the policies, solutions we need in place. And we're hoping all of you will join with us. And I know we're working very closely with AARP on this too, and expanding Medicaid home and community-based services and long-term care supports for all families.
I love that. And Brenda, would love to hear your comments on that topic as well, what you're seeing just from the day-to-day and the policy side as well.
I agree 100% with what she just offered. We have sent a letter this week to the senators on the Special Committee on Aging, supporting the very comments that she referenced. And she was right about telling your story. In that letter, we have the stories of two people and the challenges that they're having. And we are stressing the need for higher support for home care, for wages improvement in home workers. So yes, we are on board with that also and have submitted our letter to the committee detailing all of that information. We're also doing it at the state level because there are resources available now. And so we are encouraging our state legislators who've received funding, federal funding, to also take such action. And we've identified for them, the gaps in where there are home workers that are needed and the gaps in wages. And we're also requesting support from them to use and allocate the federal funding that they've received towards these expenses in the budget at the state of Michigan.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And even a story now from one of our audience members who's, I think, entering into the thick of this is asking, how do we plan ahead for these type of expenses when the window for long-term care insurance purchase has closed? In this example, her mother's 68 years and older and already diagnosed with Parkinson's. What would you recommend?
As she suggested, I would also recommend that early on, families need to have a plan. They need to come together and determine what the resources are that they have, what are the resources that are available in the public space, and determine where the gaps may be. It is just best to have an understanding to be able to work with all of the tools in the toolbox. I spoke to a friend this morning that shared with me she was about to have a conversation with her children. She'd outlined everything and was waiting to find this very special, colorful envelope to present it to them in. And I said, well, why is that necessary? She said, so they won't lose it. And when the time comes, they'll know that the envelope was very colorful and very special, and they'll know what to look for. But the point is to plan to the best of your ability with the information that you have, what information and resources are in the public space.
That's a great thought. And I think one, for our audience are that there's many takeaways from the conference today and what we're doing. But I think one, if you haven't had these tough conversations, and they are, and recognizing that it can be a tough and, emotional conversation, to begin to have those with your family unit. That includes, just as you need resources for your children, you need them as well for your parents. And so one of the topics that we touched on today a little bit, which is a big one for working parents especially, is the anxiety and the burnout that comes from caregiving. And we're seeing now with the sandwich generation, you already have the perils of raising children, but then also the perils of raising adults. So Agent, I'd love to start with you on your thoughts on what you're seeing in not only supporting caregivers who are in this space, who have to deal with both sides of it, but then people that may not know that are acting as the caregivers if they don't have that other safety net with them?
You know, I love to think about caregiving as a all hands on deck situation where we actually all need a care squad. And building a care squad, really asking who the people that you trust and who you want to be in this project of caregiving with, which is one of the most important roles of our lives, right? Actually, having a plan where you're in it together. And we, together with Second City, we actually developed a training called Improv for Caregivers. And one of the things that's so powerful about it is improv very much is an active collective effort, and they have a whole metaphor of building a house together. And caregiving is very similar, where each of us may bring a different tool. You'll bring a hammer, I'll bring a brick, you'll bring the cement, I'll bring the wood. We'll all bring different talents, different energy to the project of caregiving, but it's all necessary, and it's all, it is a group effort, and one that should be really connected and in community. And the burnout comes from the isolation. And that's the thing that we can control, is to make sure that we don't feel isolated. So build your squad, figure out what you're bringing. And, you know, especially for those of us in the sandwich generation, think of yourself as in a deli with all these other amazing sandwiches. and what we can do to make life a little bit easier and better and lift each other up.
I love that, because it can also feel like such a negative conversation sometimes. And so, to your point, it's the isolating, it's that, and to build that space. And I like that deli reference. I'm going to carry that one forward. I think that's great. One of the other questions that just came in is, and I'll stay with you on this one. Life expectancies are extending. How are policies and support changing to address the shift? For this person, they lost their grandmother at 106 years old. So she outlived the benefits and hospice care, completely depleting the savings through the journey.
This is so common and I just want to say I'm so sorry about your loss of your grandmother. And it is happening everywhere, where basically what's happening is that every day 10,000 people turn 65 in our country, because the baby boom generation, which is a huge culture defining generation, is aging into retirement. And at the same time, people are living longer than ever because of advances in medicine and technology, an average of 20 years longer than when we first started putting our safety net into place. So we've basically added an entire generation onto our lifespan and adapted nothing about the way that we live or our culture or our policies and our programs to support that additional generation onto our lifespan. And so we're all feeling the pain, and we're all trying to manage individually. And what's actually needed is a change in our policy. And the whole reason why we've been trying to affect the conversation about infrastructure, I don't know how many of you have been following, but a whole bunch of us have been saying, wait, care is infrastructure. Because if infrastructure is what we need in order for the economy and society to function, in the 21st century, when we have people living to the age of 106 years old, we actually need to build a whole new infrastructure for care to support a dignified quality of life for those people. And that is fundamental to the rest of us getting to work every day. Some people need a bridge and a highway or a transportation system to get to work, and some of us are going to need care. And so it is a public policy question. And I just really want to encourage everybody, as you vote, as you engage your members of Congress, and if you don't already do so, please start. And please start letting them know that this is a priority, and it should be a priority for every politician in America to help us prepare for the longer lifespan that we have.
That's a great thought and a great call to action. Brenda, your thoughts on the topic before we close a little bit on how else can we continue to get involved? We can reach out to legislators, that there's different movements. What do you encourage?
Oh, I encourage the same thing. It's the time to talk to your policymakers. whenever you're in a room with them, or they come out and ask you for your vote, you want them to know that this is going on not only in your family but in your community. It's also an opportunity to broaden the conversation in your personal networks. If you're members of Greek organizations, houses of worship, because as she stated, this population is growing. It's not going away. So people need to be more articulate about the topic and the issues and the public policy that's linked to it. So have these conversations. And aarp.org, if you go there, on our events page, we have these conversations and trainings all the time on how to have difficult conversations. We have teletown halls on the topics so that you can call in and participate. But you have to become more in tune to what is going on in this space in order to advocate for change.
Ladies, you both have given us so much to think about at the end of the day with this panel. There's the call to action. There's the individual planning that needs to go on in our households. There's the community building as well. We are so very grateful on behalf of the Mother Honestly team for all that you guys are doing. We will continue to share all the work that you're doing to keep not only our community involved, but to continue to spread the word, because it's only going to, as you point, we're seeing people live longer. We may not be a thing. So thank you so much for joining us again today. We are so grateful for your work, and it was such a treat to have both of you on our panel of the day. So I wish you well, and we'll continue to watch the great work that we're doing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.